Welcome, and of course we'll start with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And we'll go into the screen share. And let me just say, please, if you, I appreciate any comments you may feel like posting about what we're doing or questions that you may have. I know that basically, of course, I'm interacting with the people who are on this call, but even if you're just watching, I really appreciate, hearing from you, and just let me know what you think. So, we're still on Menachot, right? We've discussed the plain flour offering. We've talked about the loaves. We've talked about the wafers. I think that was the last we did. Let me just double check. Yeah, let's see here. Let me just go back quickly. Yeah, right. And then that's right. And then we talked about another kind of mincha. A fourth kind of mincha was on a griddle, right? On a flat top, but with oil, so that it was fried, but it was crisp. Okay, it was a crisp piece of dough. So let's keep going. So we've got now a fifth kind that we're going to discuss. And there really were a good number of different kinds of meal offerings. And I love to think that given the fact that there were all these different kinds of meal offerings represent the different nations, the different people, the different personalities, just how in so many ways people are unique, which reminds me of a Jewish Chinese fortune cookie that I got years and years and years ago, which when I read it, it said, "Bubala, you're totally unique, just like everyone else." So, we'll go. All right. So let's go on now. So we had the flat fry pan thing, the flash fried, I guess, I don't know, something like that. But regardless, the im minchat marcheshet korbanecha. So now we're talking about deep fry. That's what we're talking about right now. It's a meal offering of a marcheshet, and so a deep pan is what it is your offering. Solet hashemen taaseh. So we know that essentially menachot, meal offerings, come from fine flour. In oil you shall make it. So you fry the dough in this oil. And Rashi is, of course, going to want to answer the implied question of what is a marcheshet. So there we are, right at the start, marcheshet. Klihu, it is a vessel, it's a utensil. Shaya b'mikdash, which was in the temple. Amok, deep. Umitoch shehi amuka, and because it is a deep vessel, shmana sabur, its oil gets piled up. So it's a deep oil. The ein ha'ur sorfor, and so the fire doesn't burn it or doesn't dry it all out. But lisrof does mean to burn, essentially. But it doesn't have as direct an effect on this dough as in the machvat. And for this reason, maaseh mincha ha'asuyin letocha, and for that reason, the way in which the mincha is prepared, that's put in it, right, that is made, any mincha that is made within it, rochashin, they vibrate. It vibrates as it's frying, right? You know, if you make French fries, how the potatoes vibrate in the pan. And then he goes on to say, kol davar rach, any soft substance, al yedei mashke, which is by means of water or some liquid, right? By means of something water, near air, it's going to appear, kerochesh umenanea, looks as if it's vibrating and moving. And so that is the origin of this term marcheshet. It's something that makes objects cooked in it vibrate. So that's sort of the implication of that word. V'haveta et hamincha, and you shall bring this meal offering, asher ye'aseh, which is made, it's a nifal, it's a passive form, me'ela, from these, ladonai, to God, lashem, to God. V'hikriva el hakohen, you shall present it to the priest, to the kohen, v'higisha el hamizbeach, and he should present it to the altar or place it on the altar. The hagish basically means to take something and put it on something else, to take it somewhere else. So here he takes it over. He should take it over to the altar. Let's check on any Rashis. Yes, okay. Asher yaseh me'ela, which are made from these. So these doesn't just mean the marcheshet. So this verse, Rashi's telling us, me'echad min haminim halalu, from any one of these types. A min here means a type or a species or something like that, or a kind. So any one of these kinds of menachot, right, that we've mentioned above. V'hikriva, and he shall present it, that is ba'aleha el hakohen. I'm not going to make that mistake a second time, I hope, right? So the owner of this, the one who is presenting, the owner of the mincha, should give it to the kohen. He should present it to the kohen. Behegisha, that was a verb referring to the kohen. And so Rashi's making it very clear that we're talking about the kohen, who then takes it el hamizbeach, to the altar. Magisha, the keren. So where on the altar? The altar was quite a large object, right? So he takes it over la keren dromit ma'aravit, to the southwestern corner of the altar. So the altar was 4 square, and it pointed, each side of the square pointed to a different cardinal point. And there was a ramp on the south of the altar. So the altar would have faced, depending. So to the right of the immediate right would have been the southeastern corner of the altar. And then as you go around counterclockwise, you go to the northeastern, then the northwestern, and then the southwestern. So I think what it means is when the priest took it up to the altar, he'd walk all the way around the altar and then place the mincha at that corner onwards. V'heirim hakohen min hamincha et askarata, and the priest should remove. L'heirim means to lift up, but here he's talking about separating off. The priest should separate from the mincha, from the meal offering, et askarata, its token portion. That's this is a reference to Sepharia, that's where I got this particular translation. We've had this word before, and what it refers to is the part that is going to be actually offered on the altar, that's going to be burned. Vehiktir hamizbecha, and he should cause it to smoke upon the altar. So you have this smoke rising from the altar up towards heaven, and representing this idea of offering. And as I said, the meal offering in a clear but roundabout way represents the offering of the person. In other words, that we should use our lives to dedicate ourselves to the one who created us. That overall what we do in our lives, and the various talents and abilities and crafts that we have and stuff, and the relationships that we have, should all have this in mind behind all of it. That we are serving in a very beautiful and profound kind of way, and with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our might, our Creator. Ishe, a fire offering, from Eish, meaning a fire, Reach Nichoach. So Reach means an aroma, Nichoach means pleasing Lashem. So hear this out. What is this ultimately saying? Is that our lives, our very lives, can be a pleasing aroma to our Creator. And when you think about how we feel when we take in a pleasing aroma, you know how it really fills our souls. And it's such a pleasure. So, onwards. Et askarata, right? Its token portion is how we're translating this. Who, this is referring, he says, Rashi's telling us, who hakometz. That is referring to here's our word, right? Kometz, that pinch, that fistful, that if we want to translate it that way, but you know exactly what that's referring to. So it's interesting. That's the part. So in some ways, even though we may have to, if we're going to take this metaphor the way I'm trying to understand it, the symbolism involved is saying it's not necessarily that we have to spend 24/7, davening and studying and doing nothing else. There's a small little part of ourselves. It's the minority portion of the Mincha that actually gets put up on the altar. And the rest of it, as you'll see, let's see if we have actually goes. If we aren't reading it here, we will read it elsewhere. But we'll see. Here we go. It's going to tell us v'hanoteret, and the remainder min hamincha of the mincha la Aharon ulvanav goes to Aaron and his sons. Kodesh kodashim, ultimate sanctity, me'ishei Hashem, from the fire offerings. All the fire offerings presented to God. Kol hamincha. So now there's some observation here. By the way, we haven't finished with various types of mincha, although it's possible that they're prepared a little bit different, in one of the ways that we mentioned, but we'll see. Kol hamincha, every mincha, every meal offering, asher takrivu Hashem, which you shall offer up to Hashem, to God. Lo te'aseh chametz, should not be made leaven. So again, just to explain the symbolism involved, we know that when dough gets leavened, it rises, and essentially it rises with a gas that is let off either naturally from whatever natural yeast might occur in the flour, or the yeast that we've added to the flour to allow the dough to rise and swell. And so it represents arrogance. And arrogance essentially, I think, means a false sense of pride or importance or self-importance, etc. And that we are to try and act in as modest a way as possible. That human beings who have all these gifts, etc., that if we recognize that these innate gifts are not something we ourselves gave ourselves, but that we are part of a process, a natural process in synthesis with the universe that allows us to act intelligently and with the various gifts that we have as human beings, and to know that. So here in this particular case, you'll see it's very interesting because we're going to see that there is a case where a meal offering actually does have and is commanded to have chametz, to be leavened. However, here we go. Ki chol se'or, because every kind of leavening, v'chol dvash, and any kind of, Rashi will explain that it refers to fruit honey. He'll tell us, right? The sweetness in fruit. Lo taktiru mimenu, you shall not offer it up as you shall not cause it to smoke as a fire offering, b'sheh Lashem, right? So Rashi explains here. So v'chol dvash, he says dvash here refers to kol metikat pri, it's referring to the sweetness in fruit, karui dvash. It's called dvash in Hebrew. That's the word they use, even though generally we refer to bee honey as dvash. But dvash in Hebrew can refer to date honey or any kind of extraction of sweetness that you can get from a fruit. Korban, so here he goes. He says, however, korban, a offering, reshit of first fruits, takrivu otam Hashem. So it's not part of them of other offerings. They have their own place, which is as an offering of first fruits. You shall offer them to God. But el hamizbeach, however, onto the altar, lo ya'alu l'reach nechoch. They should not go up as a pleasing nechoch, pleasing aroma. So they were brought, yes, to the temple, but they were not offered up on the altar. They were indeed a gift that the person who was bringing their first fruits, it's a mitzvah elsewhere, the specific mitzvah of separating off your first fruits and taking them up to the temple as an offering. And they were brought on the pilgrimage festivals. And again, look at the level of giving that's involved here with our lives, so that in a sense, our lives become a gift, and the opportunity to give back, right? To take our resources and to be in a position of giving is such a privilege. So that's the nature of true privilege. So let's see, I think here we go. We have some Rashi to do. So he says, remember, so you don't bring fruits and the sweetness of fruit onto the altar. However, korban reshit, it is an offering of first fruits, takrivu, that you shall offer up. Ma yesh lecha mahavi min hasoor umin hadvash. So in that case, however, Rashi's saying there's an unanswered question. What leavening are we talking about? And what sweetness, right? Fruit sweetness, fruit nectar are we supposed to bring, right? Korban reshit. So what is it? Korban reshit as a first fruit, right? Or as a first offering. What do we mean? Reshit being a first, the idea of first. So he explains the specific offerings. Shtei halechem, the two loaves that were brought shel atzeret on Shavuot. So that was the one time when there was actually a meal offering, an offering made by fire, that was in fact leavened. Atzeret is the term, a rabbinic term for Shavuot, because it concludes the festival of Pesach in so many ways. Haba'im min hasaor, which actually come from barley. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me think. No. Sorry. Okay. No. So no, it is leavened, because no, the loaves on Shavuot are definitely wheat. They're definitely wheat. It's the omer that's actually barley, and that's right after Pesach, because barley matures earlier than wheat. So, and I'll explain a little bit the idea behind this, the symbolism. Shne'emar, as it says, chametz te'afena. It says specifically, you shall bake it leavened, chametz. Ubikurim, and the bikurim, right? That's the first fruits, min hadvash, come from the fruit that has sweetness in it. The more bikurei te'enim, like the first fruits of figs, utmarim, and dates. They both, you know that a fig has a lot of sweetness in it, and dates as well. So let me go back and say why. And the reason is because Shavuot is associated with the receiving of the Torah. And that takes a great deal of openness and willingness, and the willingness to give yourself over to divine commandment. And when you're in that position, in that case, that is whatever quote, pride we want to have is the feeling of gratitude and thankfulness for this ability, because that's actually the nature of true dignity. Service is the basis and the foundation of dignity, of human dignity. So, going on. Just want to make sure I'm in the right place. Okay. So, in fact, we are. Bechol korban, and every offering, mincha, of a meal offering, bamelach timlach. Here's where we have the statement that you should put salt in such an offering, that when you bring that offering. The Lord tashbit, and you should never cause to cease melach brit Elohecha, the salt of the covenant of your God. And what do we mean by that? Rashi's going to explain, and it's actually quite interesting. Me'al minchatecha, from your meal offering. Al kol korbancha, not only that, but on all your offerings, takriv melach, you should have salt. You should offer up salt alongside with it. So here we go. Rashi. Melach brit, the salt of the covenant. What covenant? Shabrit kruta lamelach, because there was a covenant made with salt, misheshet yemei breshit, going all the way back to the 6 days of creation. Shehuftachu hamayim hatachnonim, because the lower waters were assured, the krav b'mizbeach, which to be offered up on the altar, b'melach, through the salt, the nisuch hamayim chag, and on Sukkot there was the libation of water on Sukkot. Chag is the rabbinic term for Sukkot.
Is this why you're supposed to salt the challah?
I think so. I think it's one reason for it is because in some ways, I think it's good because in some ways the challah reminds us of the mincha offering. And we know that your table, in a sense, is an altar. So there may well be that association with eating bread with that salt.
Well, I mean, in addition to the mincha, it says that it was a covenant made with salt since the 6 days of creation.
Correct. So let me see if I can get a little bit more done here. And then believe me, I love it when you ask or make points, etc. So let me see. And if not, I will explain it. Because it doesn't look like it's here anyway. Al kol karbacha, over all or on all your offerings. So he says not only this phrase is talking about all the other offerings. In other words, al olat behema, when you bring up a offering, a whole offering of a behema, of cattle, but it also would refer to sheep and goats, the oth and birds, the imurei kol hekteshim kulan, and the imurim are those parts of the offering that are brought on the altar, and the remainder of it might go just to the priests or to the priests and the person who brought the offering. We know in the case of shlamim and todot, part of it was eaten by all the people involved. With a chatat, with a sin offering, it was eaten by the part of it was eaten by consumed by the priest. And I think the consumption of the priest was to represent the idea that God was being that the tshuva, that the repentance was acceptable. So here goes. So what happened was this, that why was this covenant made? Because initially the waters covered the entire earth. And God, remember on the day, on this, I think it was on the second day, God told those waters to, or if it was the third day possibly, told those waters to retreat so that the dry land would appear. And the waters cooperated. And so for that reason, and remember, we're speaking very symbolically here. For that reason, God made this covenant with the waters that they would have that privilege and honor of having the salt of the salt water and the waters of the libation offered up in this particular way. And if we understand that what our tradition is trying to do is to give us significance in the way in which we harmonize our own lives with the universe and its creation, with creation, so that we become an essential part of the world itself. And remember, the divine permeates everything. So there's levels of dignity and goodness and right behavior and fulfillment, etc., all bundled up in these kinds of things. And we'll stop here for today, and I will make a marking, God willing, to put in for next year. Oh, sorry, that's not what we want. I have to think about what I'm doing here. There we go. There's the bookmark. Very good. I'm going to stop the share. It's nice to see all of you here. David, you have a question?
Yeah. So if gas, just out of curiosity, if gas represents arrogance, right? And why are we allowed to eat leavened bread then? I mean, why, in the ultimate, yeah, that's the question. Simple.
Okay. I think that there's basically, there is a place for arrogance in a way, right? There's a place for all these particular things, and I think that maybe very, very, very pious people ate nothing but matzah, but the truth is, being able to have bread is something to enjoy, and the chalot are definitely, on Pesach, the challah is matzah. But I don't think God is trying to trying to create lives that our lives should be constantly punishing ourselves. Okay. And in fact, I would say this, David, if we were to eat matzah and only matzah, we wouldn't appreciate those elements in ourselves that need attention. Okay. That in some ways, the fact that on Pesach we no longer eat any leavened products actually heightens the awareness that we have, that we need to be conscious of these things. And you don't want it to become, something that we don't even think about anymore because we're so used to it.
So you're saying it's a balance, right? There's a certain balance that we're allowed, in terms of arrogance, if you want to put it that way, right? And that's why we're allowed to eat leavened bread. Okay. If yeah. Is that kind of the gist of it, or maybe?
I think so. Okay. I would say this too. I think it's a statement from Micah. What does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love mercy, and they translate the third part when it says lechet, that Hebrew means to walk modestly. Well, modestly is doing things in the way you were just describing, to have a balance of, so I think the opposite of arrogance is modesty.
Challah is particularly fluffy.
Yeah, it really is.
Challah?
Except during Passover.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We would never have challah. Couldn't eat leaven, but anyway.
But remember, on Shabbat, but you know something? Think about this. On Shabbat, you're actually involved in more mitzvot than you are during the week, possibly, right? Because when you're not pursuing your own personal labors, and you're doing this out of a divine commandment, that's a great sacrifice in many ways, in and of itself. And so that's why you should be privileged to eat fluffy challah.
Yeah, I was going to say it balances out, right? More mitzvot means more,
also,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Come on
Sorry.
now.
it's kind of like a fluffy cloud, and maybe it also symbolizes the cloud of God's sheltering us, just like it kind of also symbolizes the manna,
Right. Well, the manna is,
of God's providing. And
yes, yes.
well, the manna, because we had to have an extra on Shabbos, and then and not, cook it on Shabbos. So it kind of symbolizes that, but it also might reflect the cloud in that it's shaped like a cloud and it's very fluffy. And that could be both the cloud and the manna of God protecting us and providing for us.
It certainly could be. I mean, so the point was that they when they collected manna on the regular days of the week, if they took more than an omer's worth, whatever they left over got wormy and spoiled the next day. However, on Friday, they were told to collect a double portion. And when they did, okay, it did not spoil, because they were told that on Shabbat there wasn't going to be any manna. And I think, of course, there were people who went out on Shabbat to look for it, okay. But the idea of the double portion is how it got preserved, even though every other day it would have spoiled, which is, I think, trying to reinforce the idea of the degree to which we are actually sustained by the divine. That ultimately our survival, our sustenance, whatever, is so deeply embedded in divine providence. So remember, appreciation, gratitude, foundation of spirituality. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording.